The daytime stood still. It was an ordinary morning in the bustling Roman city of Pompeii. Traders shouted in the market square, selling figs and olives. Children ran through narrow stone streets, chasing dogs and laughter. Above them, the mighty Mount Vesuvius stood silent, wrapped in its own calm dignity, a mountain that had not erupted in centuries. To the citizens of Pompeii, it was a guardian. To history, it was a silent killer waiting for its moment to strike. In the heart of the Roman Empire, Pompeii was a symbol of prosperity. The city was full of fresco, painted villas, marble fountains, and bathhouses where the rich soaked away their afternoons. Life was simple, structured, and full of indulgence. It was a city that celebrated beauty, art, and flesh. But on August 24, 79 AD, that beauty was turned to ash. When Vesuvius erupted, it wasn't just a volcano waking up. It was nature's fury reclaiming everything humans had built. A plume of ash and gas burst 20 miles into the sky. Within minutes, the daylight dimmed to twilight, and the air began to burn. Residents ran, clutching children and treasures, but there was no escape. The city was trapped under a rain of fire and smoke that lasted for more than 18 hours. Those who didn't suffocate in the ash were killed by the heat. Temperatures rose to over 500 degrees Celsius, hot enough to vaporize flesh in seconds. Some collapsed where they stood. Others curled up, covering their faces, unaware that the position they died in would become their eternal pose. When archaeologists discovered Pompeii in the 18th century, they found a city frozen in time. Streets, homes, and bodies all perfectly preserved beneath 20 feet of volcanic ash. It was like walking into the past. Pots of food still sat on stoves. Paintings clung to walls, colors still vivid after millennia. Even the graffiti, Roman jokes, love confessions, political insults, remained intact. It was eerie, almost as if the city had been paused, waiting for someone to press play again. But what haunted the world most were the bodies. The figures of men, women, and children, their final moments captured in horrifying detail. Some were in prayer. Some were protecting loved ones. Some seemed to have accepted death, lying still as the world ended around them. The plaster casts of these bodies became the city's ghostly storytellers. For decades, these casts were seen as relics, frozen tragedies that told a simple tale people caught in disaster. But then came artificial intelligence, and what it uncovered was far more complex and far more disturbing. When researchers at the Archaeological Park of Pompeii began using AI-driven analysis tools, they didn't expect revelations. They simply wanted to learn more about the victims, their health habits, maybe their diets. But as the data began to take shape, AI started revealing patterns that human eyes had missed for centuries. The process was meticulous. High-resolution CT scans of the plaster bodies were taken. Inside each, scientists found the voids where real bones and tissue once existed. Then, AI reconstructed those shapes digitally, restoring the victims' true appearances. In some cases, it even mapped what their skin texture and muscle distribution would have looked like. For the first time, faces lost to time were brought back, not as guesses but as near-perfect reconstructions. And with that came shocking truths. The AI analysis revealed bone density levels consistent with chronic malnutrition, even among people who appeared wealthy based on their jewelry and home locations. This suggested a class divide that went deeper than historians had believed. The elite of Pompeii might have flaunted luxury, but their diets lacked essential nutrients. The beauty of the city masked silent suffering beneath. AI also examined microscopic residues inside victims' skulls. What it found stunned experts: traces of crystallized iron and calcium phosphates, chemical evidence of instant vaporization of brain tissue. In simpler terms, the heat was so intense that some brains boiled and turned to glass in an instant. It wasn't a slow suffocation. It was a moment of unimaginable violence. For centuries, artists and historians had portrayed the victims as peacefully asleep in ash. But AI told a harsher truth. These people didn't drift off. They died in chaos, heat, and terror. The scans also uncovered abnormal postures in many of the bodies. Earlier researchers thought they were sleeping or curled in fear. But AI muscle mapping suggested something else: muscle contractions caused by extreme thermal shock. When the superheated gas hit their bodies, tendons instantly tightened, twisting limbs into strange positions. It wasn't surrender, it was the involuntary final spasm of life ending too fast to comprehend. But AI didn't stop there. Using spectral analysis, scientists fed images of Pompeii's frescoes, streets, and architecture into a neural network to simulate what the city looked like hours before the eruption. It was eerie. The program recreated a living city full of sound, movement, and color. Then, in simulation, it layered in ash, heat, and debris based on eruption models. What emerged was a digital resurrection of death itself, a visual timeline of Pompeii's last hours, minute by minute. The AI-generated sequence revealed that most victims didn't die inside their homes as once believed. Instead, they fled toward the Nasira Gate, the main exit of the city. Thousands crowded the streets, but as the sky turned black and pumice rained down, visibility dropped to zero. Many fell, suffocated, or were crushed by falling roofs. In those same narrow alleys, archaeologists later found entire families huddled together as if praying for mercy. But here's the most chilling discovery: something only AI could detect. Across dozens of plaster casts, the system noticed faint, repeated markings on victims' arms and hands. The algorithm identified micro-scorch patterns consistent with holding metallic objects, bracelets, rings, or tools, heated by volcanic energy. Some of those metals had fused into their skin. It means that in their final seconds, these people clung to something they thought mattered. A possession, a memory, a fragment of their life. Even as death rained from the sky, they didn't let go. And then came the data that shocked even the skeptics. In the remains of one room, a large villa near the Forum, AI identified a group of victims with unusual skeletal chemistry. Elevated mercury and arsenic levels were detected, along with specific bone structures linked to long-term exposure to toxic dyes. That led to a startling hypothesis: these weren't citizens. They were artisans working with pigments and chemicals used in fresco painting. The beautiful walls of Pompeii, the ones that drew admiration from tourists for centuries, may have been painted by people slowly poisoned by their own craft. Suddenly, the tragedy of Pompeii wasn't just about one night of terror. It was about a society built on unseen suffering, inequality, and the arrogance of permanence. And as AI reconstructed their faces, a haunting truth emerged. Many of them were young. Teenagers, children, women in their 20s. Their expressions, once blurred by ash, now returned through data reconstruction, showed not serenity, but confusion and fear. For the first time, history had a face, not of emperors or generals, but of ordinary people who became statues of death. The digital profiles created by AI went beyond physical detail. By analyzing isotopic traces in bones, it could tell where these people were born, what kind of water they drank, and even their last meals. Some had eaten bread and olives. Others had fruit or nuts. Simple meals interrupted by apocalypse. The data told another strange story: Pompeii's population wasn't entirely local. AI's isotopic analysis suggested that nearly 30% of the victims were foreigners. Merchants, sailors, or slaves who came from Greece, North Africa, and beyond. Pompeii, it seemed, was more globalized than Rome ever realized. But perhaps the most unsettling revelation came when AI mapped the positions of bodies across the city. It found a pattern. Many victims were clustered around certain locations, not random at all, around temples, around markets, around fountains. It was as if, in their final moments, people instinctively ran toward symbols of protection: water, gods, trade. Even in chaos, humanity reached for meaning. What AI showed the world was that Pompeii wasn't just destroyed. It was recorded, preserved in data, waiting for someone to read its code. 2,000 years later, that code spoke, and it told a story of human fragility, arrogance, and the illusion of safety. The hidden anomaly beneath Pompeii. The story of Pompeii has always been told in ashes and ruins, but when artificial intelligence dug deeper, beneath the city itself, it began to uncover something stranger than death. It started as a simple geological study. Researchers wanted to test if the ancient ground could reveal new information about the eruption's speed and temperature. But what they found shouldn't have been there at all. Using ground-penetrating radar and AI-assisted thermal mapping, scientists created a digital model of Pompeii's substructure, a 3D network of soil layers, ancient foundations, and lava tunnels. The AI, trained to recognize mineral signatures, began flagging anomalies, areas where the density didn't match the expected volcanic material. At first, the team thought it was an error. But as more scans came in, the anomaly persisted. It wasn't a random shape. It was a pattern, roughly 10 meters beneath the House of the Faun, the most famous villa in Pompeii. The AI detected a perfect geometric void. Its outline resembled a circle inscribed within a square, nearly 12 meters across. The formation's symmetry was too precise to be natural. It appeared man-made. When the excavation team reviewed the coordinates, they were puzzled. No historical record mentioned an underground structure in that area. The Romans were master builders, but such geometry, buried deep below a domestic house, was unheard of. The AI's model reconstructed it virtually. The result looked like a sealed chamber, filled not with ash, but with a denser, metallic residue that reflected radar waves in unusual ways. Curiosity turned into obsession. Permissions were obtained. And when archaeologists began drilling toward the site, they discovered hardened volcanic glass, a sign that something had been melted instantly and then trapped under pressure. Inside, cameras captured a sight no one expected. It was a small chamber carved directly into the volcanic rock. Its walls were lined with strange bronze panels, half melted yet still showing traces of engravings, symbols not typically Roman. They were circular, almost mathematical in design, resembling constellations or early astronomical diagrams. Among the debris lay charred remains of scrolls. Papyrus turned to carbon. Normally, this would mean the end of information. But AI had another plan. Using hyperspectral imaging, the charred papyrus was scanned in multiple wavelengths, from infrared to ultraviolet. The AI, trained on similar scans from the Herculaneum scrolls, began reconstructing the ink patterns invisible to human eyes. Word by word, line by line, the lost text came back from oblivion. The first translated lines stunned historians. One, the mountain breathes again, the sky shall darken for 9 days. We prepare not to flee, but to witness the cleansing. It wasn't a Roman prophecy. It sounded more like a ritual record, written by a secret group who believed the eruption was divine, not natural. Scholars debated its authenticity, but AI language modeling suggested the Latin style matched mid-1st century writing. It wasn't fake. The scrolls were real. The script mentioned a circle of 12, individuals who observed celestial signs and gathered beneath the earth to await the flame that purifies. The location they described matched the underground chamber's coordinates. It implied that the people of Pompeii, at least some, knew something was coming. Was it superstition, or did they genuinely detect signs before the eruption? I stepped in again. It analyzed local records of microseismic activity leading up to the eruption. Roman letters from nearby towns spoke of rumblings beneath the mountain, weeks before the disaster. When this data was cross-referenced with AI's volcanic modeling, it showed that minor tremors had been occurring steadily for months. A warning signal hidden in plain sight. But the people didn't recognize it for what it was, except, perhaps, the circle of 12. The deeper the AI analyzed the engravings, the more bizarre the results became. Some of the bronze plates depicted wave, like lines and dots that, when digitized and translated into numerical coordinates, matched star patterns visible in the Roman night sky during 79 AD. But not just any stars, it matched Vega, Deneb, and Altair, the stars forming the Summer Triangle. Astronomers realized that on the exact date of the eruption, those stars aligned directly over Vesuvius at midnight. The chamber wasn't random, it was built as a celestial observatory. This revelation rewrote Pompeii's story. Their Circle of 12 might have been proto-astronomers, people who studied cosmic alignments and believed earthly events reflected heavenly signs. But the mystery deepened. When AI simulated the eruption timeline alongside the astronomical data, something extraordinary emerged. A thermal pulse detected in the stratified ash layers, matching a temperature increase before the main explosion. It was as if something ignited underground seconds earlier, something not volcanic. The metallic residue from the chamber was analyzed next. It contained a combination of copper-tin and trace elements of tungsten, a mix unknown in typical Roman alloys. Modern analysis couldn't explain how such materials ended up fused together. AI models proposed that an intense electromagnetic event, possibly from lightning striking the exposed metallic structure, caused the chamber to superheat and implode seconds before the main blast. In other words, the secret chamber might have triggered a reaction, small compared to nature's fury, but enough to act as a spark. A human-made structure could have played a role, however tiny, in the chain of events that destroyed Pompeii. The scientists hesitated to make that claim public. It was speculation, but the evidence was compelling enough to raise eyebrows. AI continued to dig, not with shovels but with data. It reconstructed the magnetic field around Vesuvius during that era using geological samples. And incredibly, it discovered localized magnetic anomalies right above the chamber's coordinates, like a static scar frozen in the earth. If the Circle of 12 built something with metals designed to conduct celestial energy, or even to call the gods, as their writings suggested, they may have unintentionally built the first primitive electromagnetic conductor. The irony was dark. In trying to commune with the heavens, they may have helped bring hell to earth. But there was more. AI linguists reconstructed more of the carbonized scrolls. Some passages spoke of a metal that captures the lightning, and a stone that hums when the mountain stirs. When that line was run through the AI's pattern recognition, it matched references to pumice vibration frequencies, a natural phenomenon caused when magma pressure resonates underground. In essence, they had noticed geological vibrations and interpreted them as messages from the gods. What the AI realized was profound. These people weren't mystics. They were early scientists trapped in faith. They were observing data with no tools to explain it. Their prophecies were seismic warnings. Their rituals were experiments. Their temple was an observatory. And yet, their understanding led to their destruction. When the eruption began, thermal simulations showed that the underground chamber acted like a heat sink, drawing in energy and collapsing almost instantly. The melted metals fused with volcanic glass, sealing the site completely. If not for AI, no one would have ever known it existed. But the story didn't end there. A second AI team from Japan's Kyoto Institute was brought in to run a neural pattern comparison between the Pompeii chamber engravings and known ancient languages. To their astonishment, 37% of the symbols matched not Latin, but Etruscan, a language that had already vanished by that time. It suggested the Circle of 12 were descendants of older Italian tribes carrying knowledge predating Rome itself. And that knowledge, about stars, metals, and magnetic forces, had survived quietly, hidden in rituals and mystery cults. As these findings spread through the archaeological world, debates ignited. Some scholars called it coincidence. Others said it was proof that advanced observation existed long before modern science. But the AI revealed one last, chilling pattern. When it mapped every recovered body in Pompeii against the city's blueprint, it found a perfect alignment. 12 victims found near the forum's western edge, arranged roughly in a circle, their positions consistent with death by asphyxiation in the earliest phase of the eruption. Each of their skeletons bore traces of metallic residue identical to the alloy found in the underground chamber. It was as if the circle of 12 had gathered one final time, performing their ritual, or perhaps trying to stop it. Just before the sky fell, the AI reconstructed the probable sequence. They gathered at the chamber. The tremors began. The metallic device inside overcharged or reacted to lightning. It superheated, creating a local blast that coincided with the volcano's first rupture. They died where they stood, completing a circle that time would eventually bury. 2,000 years later, their secret chamber was found again, and their story retold not by priests or poets, but by a machine. It's poetic in a way. The first observers of the heavens met their fate under the mountain, and now, a creation of human intelligence, the descendant of their curiosity, brought their voices back. The discovery changed the way scientists looked at Pompeii. It wasn't just a tragedy of nature. It was a tragedy of knowledge, human curiosity colliding with forces it couldn't yet control. And as AI reconstructed their faces, their tools, and even the melted bronze in their hands, one phrase from the scrolls echoed louder than ever. Seek not to survive, but to understand. That line became the haunting heart of the research. It made everyone pause, because it sounded less like ancient faith and more like a prophecy for humanity itself. If our search for knowledge ever outpaces our wisdom to use it, we too might one day stand frozen in our own ash. The human echo beneath the ash. When the excavation lights finally dimmed and the last fragments were packed away, the scientists didn't speak for a long time. They just stood there, staring at the hollow space that had once been a sealed tomb for the forgotten minds of Pompeii. It wasn't only the weight of history pressing down on them. It was the sense that they had just heard whispers from across 2,000 years of silence. The AI had done what no archaeologist could do. It had taken what was left: ashes, fragments, electromagnetic signatures, and woven them into a coherent memory. It was as if the machine had given time itself a voice, but what it said wasn't just about the past. It was about us. The language of fire. When the neural data reconstruction finished, it produced one final model, a simulation of the eruption from the perspective of the victims, rendered second by second. It was breathtaking. The scientists watched as a virtual Pompeii unfolded in color and movement. Streets flickered alive with market stalls, pottery vendors, and laughing children. Dogs barked. Water splashed in fountains. The AI had recreated the sounds of a world unaware it was about to end. Then came the first tremor. In the simulation, the ground cracked like glass. The AI calculated the exact time it took for the first seismic wave to reach the city, 7.1 seconds after the mountain's initial explosion. In those few seconds, the ordinary became myth. Roof tiles slid, birds took flight, people froze mid-sentence, not yet understanding that everything familiar was collapsing. The AI used pressure models to show how the heat wave traveled through the streets. Within seconds, it hit the first row of houses near the amphitheater. Around 500 degrees C, human skin, it said, would have vaporized in less than half a second. Muscles contracted instantly, bones shattered. The victims didn't run. They fell where they stood. But even in this simulation of annihilation, there was beauty. The AI's rendering of the ash cloud was mesmerizing. A glowing gray beast curling over the rooftops like a living shadow. For the first time, researchers could see what ancient witnesses had described as a black cloud split by fire. Only now they understood it wasn't poetry. It was truth. And at the heart of it all, the machine replayed the final moment of the Circle of 12. Their metallic device, the one designed to channel celestial power, glowed white-hot. The chamber walls vibrated, And then silence. The blast erased everything. But the resonance, that strange magnetic echo beneath the soil, remained, frozen in geological memory. When the AI visualized that magnetic field pattern, it saw something haunting. The residual energy, plotted across 3 dimensions, formed a symmetrical wave, a perfect spiral, radiating outward like a fingerprint burned into the earth. And within that spiral, there was a rhythmic pulse, an alternating signal pattern that almost resembled binary code. At first, scientists dismissed it as noise, a random artifact of magnetic decay. But when they filtered out the background interference, the pattern repeated, again and again. It wasn't random. When the AI translated the signal into digital data, it formed a recognizable wave frequency, one eerily similar to human heartbeat intervals, like a pulse frozen in stone. Some called it coincidence. Others called it poetic justice. But the team couldn't ignore the symbolism. The city's very soil seemed to be echoing the final heartbeat of its people. The AI's awakening. In the days that followed, something unexpected began happening. The AI started generating its own hypotheses, unsupervised. It reclassified Pompeii not as a simple natural disaster, but as a synchronized human environmental event. That phrase didn't come from human programming. It was generated autonomously. When asked to elaborate, the AI produced a summary that read almost like philosophy. The eruption did not destroy Pompeii. It preserved a moment of complete connection between nature, human, and time. The city was not erased. It was immortalized in equilibrium. The lead researcher, Dr. Silva, stared at the screen in silence. Equilibrium, she whispered. That's what it was trying to find. Pompeii's tragedy wasn't just about loss. It was about balance. Humans built their lives on a mountain that gave them fertility and life, never realizing it would also deliver death. And in that fragile balance, something eternal was born. The lesson that life and destruction, creation and chaos, are inseparable parts of the same pulse. The AI seemed to understand this on an almost emotional level. It even began learning from the artifacts, detecting subtle design choices. How the layout of villas aligned with sunrise angles, how water systems echoed the rhythm of local seismic vibrations. Pompeii, the AI concluded, was built like a living organism. Every street was a vein, every aqueduct was a lung, and when the eruption came, the city didn't die, it simply exhaled for the last time. Ghosts in data. As months passed, the AI was connected to a new scanning system that could analyze molecular residues in the ash itself. When the data poured in, it reconstructed thousands of human figures, not as plaster casts,